It would not have been possible to produce all of the sessions and content for Punchback Print and bring you all of this content for free without the help of our amazing sponsors. So without further ado, here is a quick word from one of them.
Hi there. In 2019, the market for large format print worldwide will reach a value of £34.5 billion, with a total of 10.88 billion square metres of graphics printed. Pretty impressive. With a turnover of 14 billion, gross value added of 5.5 billion, and employing around 112,000 people in 8,000 companies, the UK printing sector is an important economic contributor to the bedrock of the country's communication and marketing infrastructure.
Welcome back to the second session, which is titled How to Sell Solutions, Not Print. Today on the call, we've got Lucy Swanson from Nutshell Creative, Mike Hughes, Latcham Direct, David Loney, Latcham Direct, Lance Hill from 8 Days Print Solutions, and myself, Kelvin Bell from VPress. In our last session, we spoke to Siobhan Atkinson, who joins us today from Huddersfield Town Foundation, to find out how we can help increase their profile in order to increase their database and brand awareness. Now I'd like to hand over to Lucy, who's going to lead us through the work we've done to this stage. Lucy.
Okay, thank you, Siobhan, for joining us again for the second session. I think you'll agree we had a good chat the last time and got some quite key bits of information from you and what you want to achieve. So just to summarise on that, we took two primary objectives from that first session, and they were building a database of donors so you can engage with them yourself within the future and not be reliant on the club database, so you can facilitate any marketing communications yourself, and also to raise awareness about what the charity actually does, what it stands for and where the money goes. And just to support that last bullet point, something that a key point that we took away from the last session was you're really passionate about doing that, and you want to emphasise that the community connection of Huddersfield Town Foundation is always out there. Donors know that every pound they donate stays within the Kirklees area.
Nice to meet you again, Siobhan. So what we're recommending is an integrated marketing campaign. So the campaign will combine direct mail, door drop, both with landing pages. We'll have email follow-ups and reminders, as well as we want to look at a web to print offering, which will include both business and consumer storefront, which we'll talk about later on as well.
Okay, so just to frame, why we've suggested that, an integrated marketing campaign is the way forward, we've put together some research that we feel supports our proposal here. So when we talk about integrated marketing, it's about making channels work together and making them work harder. And you'll see one of the key stats from there, 51% of people prefer companies to use a blend of mail and email together.
What we want to look at is the direct mail side initially, and especially within the charity sector. So there's lots of research and stats behind it, as you can imagine. So these particular figures is actually from the brand new Chartered Institute of Fundraising. They just got their chartership a couple of months ago. So over 80% of charities are utilising direct mail within their individual giving programme. Indeed, they are also, it's a combination, it's not just direct mail that they're using. And over 90% have said that direct mail enhances that supporter engagement. In other words, making that connection with the cause and the individual just that bit stronger. The strength of the story is absolutely paramount in the ask. That's because it explains where the money goes to, and more importantly, from my point of view, it's who it's going to, and why it's benefiting that individual. So direct mail has that ability for you to convey that story in just words and images. Further research, these are really interesting couple of stats. There's one coming up as well. If we look at the engagement rate here, 96% are opened, in some way engaged with, and nearly 50% are kept around for 28 days. Just think of those rates compared to just email on its own. But for me, the next slide is the key message regarding the stats. Clearly, we want individuals to respond to that communication by making a donation, yes, but also visiting the website, talking to someone, spreading that word, go on social media, and 25% just do that from a direct mail piece. So this is a case study for University of Edinburgh. This was their Edinburgh Up campaign. It was kind of based on, if you know the program 7 Up, where they took kids that 7-year-old and then filmed them every 7 years from there on. And the main aim of the study was to raise funds for bursaries. And the people within the pamphlet that you see bottom left-hand corner, they all had bursaries when they studied at Edinburgh. So within the pamphlet, there's a picture of them graduating on the day, and then there's a picture of them, what they look like now, and little thumbnails of their stories since then. And what we wanted to do, it's a difficult ask, asking for a bursary in places like Edinburgh or London, because the cost of living is quite high. People could possibly say, well, instead of go to Edinburgh, go to Dundee or, God forbid, Newcastle. There's nobody from Newcastle, is there, in the room? So what we wanted to do is make it really, really individual and personalised. So the letter contained, I think it was up to about 28 segmentations, and it linked to the individual, got the story from the individual that graduated at the same year they did. So the story about the graduation year, and there's an information about that pupil, about that graduate, where they are now, where they've gone on to be, and it also has a story of a current student who has a bursary as well. So it's basically bringing in images as well as text. So the segmenting text was 28 through, but obviously on the images, on the back of the letter, which I don't think we've got on here, on the back of the letter was an image of the individual that graduated in the same year with their story as well. So we're bringing in images and text as well. From the point of view of, I know I'm going through this quite quickly, but from a results point of view, they actually had the best performance pack they've ever had.
Okay, so just moving on to some creative elements. We talked about not having the accessibility of the database direct. So we feel that it'd be a good opportunity to start with a piece of DM that the club could mail out on your behalf. And here we've got 2 visuals, one that's actually a letter format. So research actually shows that you get really good interaction when charities send letters, as opposed to more, marketing-based flyers and leaflets and things like that. So we've got the opportunity to do a letter, but then we've also visualised a 2-page sort of A5 postcard that could be used for some follow-up comms further down the line when you want to keep people informed, and just a cost-effective way of sending out another piece of communication. So the idea here is that we could potentially take a sample of your season ticket holders. We wouldn't recommend sending it out to the full 18,000 because we want to test and learn first. So we could look at sending out potentially a sample of 5,000. It'd be great if we could look at segmentation. and profile that data accordingly. Some ideas that we bounced around that we could look at, if possible, the longevity, how long a person's been a season ticket holder. So we could personalise to that effect within the text to say, you know, thank you for being a season ticket holder for 10 years or 8 years, and continue with that, you know, conversation with them to keep them engaged. We've included a personalised QR code, which Lance will talk about a little bit more further down the line. Really sort of embrace the one club, you know, one community approach, because we thought that was very important to follow that through. And then, you know, the hook is to win a signed shirt. It'd be great to bring in some other ideas to keep the conversation going and give them, you know, other giveaways or other prize draws. So then, just following on from the DM, when Mike starts to talk about the customer journey, we've included personalised landing pages where people are directed from, you know, an initial DM that's sent out, or the initial email that could be sent out as a reminder that follows the DM. And here you'll have the opportunity to capture the data itself by the person filling out the landing page. And if we're able to do this with the data, given the club sending it out on our behalf, it'd be ideal for us to be able to populate that just to save time in people completing it. I'll hand over to Lance.
Thanks, Lucy. So while we're still on the sort of creative theme, obviously as a charity or any organisation, you want to make sure you maximise the effectiveness of your pack that you invest in. So we're really fortunate that Royal Mail provides support. They provide quite a lot of tools to help with creativity. And this particular is just an example of a British Legion pack, as you can see. And they use something called eye tracking software, which is a 3M sort of developed software which uses thousands of algorithms, and it tracks where the eyes go on a pack. So it's from thousands of data sets, and it's looking at the creative. So okay, there you go. Where's the heat map? So not only does it give you the hot spots in terms of where the eyes linger, but also they do something called sequencing as well to see where the eye goes first. So this is proven to work in terms of, you know, the test and learn process. So it could be a case of moving the key message, or even the logo. It could be on the outside of the envelope or on the inside of the product itself. Just making very small tweaks can make a big difference to the effectiveness and the responsiveness of your pack. And you can do this across the DM piece and also obviously on the door drop again, because it's literally a profile where we put the PDF into a system and it spits out effectively a report with some commentary that's overlaid onto the top. So this is a great exercise to go through, and the charity sector particularly have been very hot on using this, and they have benefited from it massively. So you can see the outer envelope there as well. So for example, just on that one, the logo you'll see on the top left. So one of the things that consumers do when they receive a pack, you imagine you receive the letter through your letterbox, you mostly would pick up the envelope at the bottom, so your thumb would cover the bottom left or the bottom right of the envelope. A lot of brands used to put their logos on the bottom of the envelope, and now they've moved to the top for that reason, that the thumb is covering the brand. Obviously for you, like any business or any charity, you know, branding is obviously key, particularly in the exercise you're trying to go through. And again, there you can see the linger time as well. You've got 98%. So most people have homed in onto the brand at the top left of the envelope. So of course, that's what you want, that brand recognition. Moving on to the door drop as well. Again, the creativity we would match. So whilst the creative and the branding would look similar to the DM piece, the door drop would be different because it's a different audience. So obviously, as Lucy said, with the DM, we're going to target a 5K test audience. With the door drop, we're going to go to a broader audience in terms of postcode sector, so we can look at some profiling with Royal Mail tools to say where are the high net worth individuals, where are the postcode sectors where there's a high propensity, and target those areas. And we can also use, again, the QR code, potentially locate it based on postcode. So when they scan the QR code, as they will with the DM piece, the landing page is more of a personalised filter in terms of where they're located. So again, it's a great tool. And door drops, again, the good thing about them, they're hitting a broader audience, they're low cost, they're high impact, And of course, they would include non-football fans. Whereas your DM piece, you know it's going to football fans or season ticket holders. The door drop's going to go to other people as well. So whilst they might not be football fans, they're going to be in the location. They're going to be supporting, or likely to support, the cause that you're pushing out. So again, it's a great way of capturing new data and new individuals. Again, we've got the drive to web call to action. And one last thing as well is that there are some incentives available as well for people who've not done DM or door-to-door before. So Royal Mail offer discounts on pieces of mail that have got a QR code in, which can give you an additional 15% off your postage costs. And again, for door drop, you can get what's called a new user rate if you've not done it before, where you can get an additional 10% discount from the cost of the door drop. So again, there are incentives there to help you invest in the channel.
Hi, I'm Mike. I wanted to show you also what we are proposing to do is to bring in a campaign automation solution, which you can access through a web portal, and this links together various parts of the campaign so that you can gather data and you can link what's being printed to what's happening online as well. So this tool is called Circle. It's from XMPie, and we can implement this. And we just put a plan together to share with you of how it could work. So basically the outbound direct marketing piece, which we've just talked about, I understand you might be able to get some data from the football club maybe to begin with, so we can import some of the data into the campaign. And then, as discussed, really break that down into a couple of different segments, maybe by different types of supporter. And then we can print the letters and the postcards that we showed earlier, and we can include the QR codes, which are actually unique to the data which is coming. And that's very important. So when people come and respond to that, if they use the QR code, or if they don't, by the way, the QR code is just simply something that can be picked up on any iPhone or Android these days. You can just scan that and it'll take you directly to a personalized landing page. And that personalized landing page can be linked with the various versions of the campaign that was sent out. So we can have different versions of that landing page. And also we can, within that, obviously start to collect some people's data. So the fact that we've had data that maybe came from the football club in the first place, say, would pre-complete the form on the landing page. But really importantly, that needs to be permissioned for the foundation, because you're different organizations, and therefore you need to get permission to be able to use that data for the foundation. And so that form may be pre-completed, but it'll have a special permissions box on there so people can say, yeah, happy for that to be used by the foundation now. So that's an important part of what you wanted in order to start to build your own database with your own permissions you can use for the future. And of course, once people have done that, then they want to come through, and down here I've just said we can then link directly to your Just Giving. I understand you use Just Giving for some of the where you do the fundraising or others. We can link directly into that. And of course, we can also encourage people to share socially as well online. And of course, if they made a donation or they've taken part in the prize draw, say, then we send them an email follow-up to that. And we can also send you, by the way, an email directly saying that they've taken part in the campaign, so you can update your CRM system or your database. We've also then, using very similar kind of techniques, we've done this for door drop as well. Of course, door drop is not personalized, but it is versions. So there are a couple of different versions of the door drop. They would actually have different QR codes on them. So when people respond to those, we know which one they're responding to. So we can start to capture that data in the analytics, and we can start to understand what's been successful and maybe what's been less successful within the campaign, and you can refine that going forward. And then finally, of course, there's the prize draw itself that may happen, or selecting the winner, communicating with them, sending the prizes out. But of course, then also having another follow-up email, let's say, to the people who've been taking part to try and drive them back to you as well through this. And all of this is online. All of this, when the campaign's live, you can just click on to various parts of this and you can see what the analytics and the stats are for each part of the campaign.
Okay, so we've talked a little bit about technology and how we can help you. And one of the things, Siobhan, we took away from the first conversation that we had was that you've got limited resources at your end, and think about how there are ways that we can use technology to assist you. This is a platform from VPress. It's in use in over 5,000 organisations and a couple of hundred of very high-profile charities. And what it is, it's a traditional web-to-print storefront, but with lots of functionality. And you can pick and choose this functionality as you require. Fundamentally, what it means is you can edit and amend your print requirements, either to download locally, utilise for social media, or send off to print production very quickly, very effectively, while in compliance with your own brand. It also means that your print costs will conventionally be cheaper as well, because the work that you're doing and personalising the artwork will be ready for production, wherever that production may be. It's fully mobile responsive. We can style it and make it look however you want it to be. We can support VDP, so if you want to do variable coffee mornings en masse, upload a spreadsheet and you can create multiple invites or coffee mornings so people can have can interact with social distancing in place. However you want to utilize that functionality. So you can personalize images, data, context, everything that you wish. You can also support promotional merchandise that you can personalize. We have social media where you can download, optimize for Twitter, LinkedIn, Facebook, and so forth. So the structure of your brand and integrity is always intact. It's got a built-in QR code system, so you can add QR codes now, which are very topical in this current climate. We're also offering you a DAM, digital asset management. Not sure if you utilize one of these at the moment, but it's a repository where you can store all of your images and your assets and your videos as well. It's backed up in Amazon S3 cloud, so you've got an unlimited amount of storage space there. And what the system will do is it will pre-flight images that are used within print items to make sure that the images are the correct aspect ratio and DPI. So, you know, the brand is fully supported. So job submission to any printer, it's a point and shoot system. You can send it anywhere. And you can even have an RFQ. So if you want a new job or you just want a price for a job to send to a number of printers, the system can also support that. So that's the two aspects of web to print. That's the B2B side. We thought we could pick and choose from a menu of features that we can utilize to help you in the day-to-day process with your limited resources. Then just moving forward onto the second aspect of web to print, there's looking at your website, which is a WordPress-based application. So the easiest way to make an impact and to assist there is we could actually plug something called WooCommerce into it. And you can then link the marketing collateral in your B2B portal through into your B2C storefront. And these portals can be created very quickly, and you don't have to be a complete technology-based person in order to support it. But it means that we can support your brand awareness in the B2C environment. We can use it to collect data from people coming into the site. And you can even do things like personalized face masks if there's a requirement. So if you come up with an initiative, this platform can be used to support that initiative. There's no boundaries. You obviously, it helps if you've got some kind of creative input, like Lucy can assist with, but you know, you can input the templates into the system and use them. WooCommerce is the most commonly used commerce platform for websites. So it's very quick to deploy, very easy to manage, and very straightforward, and very typical of the market. And it comes with a payment gateway, so you can obtain any payment or not for certain items as you wish. So this is something we can turn around pretty quickly with a bit of a brief and some permissions from you, and we can assist you with where you want to take the brand and what you want to achieve.
I think from our point of view is looking at it as a whole. This isn't really just a one-off campaign. Once a supporter comes on board or a member, you want to keep them for that initial first year, because that's really the key, first year. And obviously then moving on to either from an individual one-off giver to a regular giver such as DDs and so on. So initially, as a thank you, and Mike touched on it earlier on, thank you email goes out. The ideal would be an actual letter goes out probably from you, Siobhan, being the CEO, which states where the donation's going. Really underline that again, and the thank you as well. You may want to do a welcome pack, and in the welcome pack there might be, that's where your letter sits, Siobhan. There might be a calendar of events, there might be a small gift, pen, pin badge, whatever it may be. Again, little contact in a month's time, might be a simple email. This is where your money's going, this is what's happening. And throughout the year, you're talking to them with stories. You're talking about, you know, an individual, for instance, might write to them personally. This is what the foundation has meant for me. You might want to do, maybe with the higher values, a little video link, which is personalised from a player or from a recipient, a beneficiary. Or you might want to pick up the phone. I know you've got small staff, but you can actually look at the data and see who is the donors that you want to interact with from that level. But always bear in mind, it's about the long-term supporter and the life of that supporter with that foundation. Always followed up by stories, always followed up by your money is doing this, and this is why we need your continued support. So it's an ongoing process.
So thank you, everybody. Just to summarise what we've been talking about here, and open up the discussion in how we can take the campaign forward. We've looked at planning. We'd like to agree and execute an integrated marketing campaign to support the two objectives, which is to increase awareness and build a database of contacts. We want to provide the foundation with the tools to support them and implement their marketing activity internally. And most importantly, we want to work together so we can obtain key measurables and demonstrating how this integrated marketing process can work and deliver results and increase the protection of the brand long term. Thank you. Any questions, Siobhan?
No, it's fascinating to sort of see all of that research on where the eyes go and what's most important, because I guess in my world we'd never think of those things, and just kind of using all of that knowledge and understanding the kind of difference between the two sets of data and how we make that appealing. So yeah, it looks really exciting.
So another thing to note that with the customer journey that Mike was talking about, you talked in the last session about having a CRM available to you, which could be Salesforce or one other that you mentioned. The beauty of doing or executing campaigns like this is that you can integrate that into Salesforce and it will capture the data for you. I mean, initially, if we're doing a sample campaign, then you can have access to a dashboard and download the data yourself. But yeah, it's just one to be aware of if it's something that you did in repetition, as David pointed out in one of his last slides, to keep the conversation going. It's a great way of maintaining that and it not getting all clunky with manual processes.
Yeah, and I think for me, just really understanding who are we most likely to appeal to. So I think having these two campaigns where we go direct to our supporter base, but then just to the general public, that would be really fascinating to see kind of which has the better and greater return and who's actually more interested in the work and the undertakings of the foundation, and just kind of maybe dispelling a myth that just because you're a fan you are interested, whereas actually just understanding whether that general person in the community that does like to make a donation to charity would actually be interested in our work but isn't bothered about the day-to-day results on the pitch of a football club, and just kind of seeing how that all connects and how you can map that journey and get that feedback along the way is really useful for us. I think sometimes in our industry we tend to just let's just run a campaign and then we judge the results of it based on how much money we raise, and we don't ever kind of look behind any of the data behind the rest of it and kind of understand the various steps that we've got to that point. So the way that you kind of presented it really brings it to life.
Yeah. Is this anything you've considered before in taking this sort of approach with the external marketing and internal?
No, we've only ever kind of utilised the kind of in-house resource that's available to us just by booking slots in various kind of club comms that goes out. We've never really kind of thought too much about kind of doing our own direct mail and seeing what that return would give us. So there's an immense kind of food for thought in all of this that's come back to us, and some really kind of clever ideas of just how you work through it and what's important for us to consider, I think, in the kind of final execution.
Siobhan, I think one of the mistakes sometimes people make is they just go for one large campaign, as you said, and the approach we're taking here is to say, test different things. You know, doesn't have to be big to begin with, and hopefully you'll hit a seam of gold where something works really well, and of course then you can roll that out and scale that up a bit. And once you found a good winning formula, if you like, of a type of creative that works for your particular audience that's, you know, working well.
I think for me, in part of my head, I was thinking, like, how many times can you execute this, and does there reach a point where, you know, is this something sort of do once a year? Do we kind of stagger a kind of geographical rollout across our kind of area? Is it something that we do every 2 years? Because just conscious in our market, lots of, you know, everyone gets lots of mailings from charities. So how do we kind of not come across that that's all that we're doing, is we're just asking for the money all the time, and it kind of don't want to be too much in the face of people. But equally balancing that off, that we don't want them to forget about what we do, and that we do need that kind of regular donation coming through to fulfill all the projects and programs that we work on. So
I think that, from my point of view, that's all about the storytelling, isn't it? And the education, and making that brand aware out there from a kind of continual point of view of what you're doing. As you said, you know, in the last session, you're no longer just an organisation that take kids to play football on the weekend. There's far more to it than that.
Yeah, and just understanding, like I say, would we just run this like once a year, but maybe kind of throughout that year tackle different geographical areas? I really like that idea of kind of that sample of different postcodes and connecting into different data sets, rather than, I guess, if we'd have done this on our own without any of this input, we'd have just gone, right, send it to everybody, and not really had the thought process behind that.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point, because what's important is that you get a good return on it. So that's why we're not saying don't go for mass, do a test approach, use the budget properly. So make sure you're using all the tools available so you can analyse the responses, because you're going to get very different responses from the DM piece, which is obviously going to, you know, effectively your hot prospects, because they are your fan base, and the door drop's going to give you a different set of results because you're going to that much broader audience. But equally, you can track responses from both, and you can analyse those, compare them. And one will probably work slightly better than the other, but I think there's potentially a good way of blending the two. But the key thing is you get the results, you can see, you can measure your attribution and where you've invested. And that's the key part for me, is it? And then you can make decisions going forward what you do next in terms of taking the campaign onwards.
And one of the things talking about print is that print's moved a long way since, you know, particularly in the last couple of years. I mean, with digital print now, we can do, you know, shorter runs, medium runs, lots of personalisation. And digital print isn't expensive as it was a few years ago. I mean, you don't have to do a long run. You could, in fact, stage that as smaller little campaigns throughout the year. So you've got at least something going on, and it doesn't necessarily have to be that expensive anymore to do it that way.
Yeah, I mean, I would say that, you know, if again, without the input that we've got today, we would have probably just resorted very much to kind of a digital, you know, using our LinkedIn, our Twitter, a web article, because we wouldn't have thought about that print side of it. But if I look at it from a personal perspective, I think that kind of having something in your hand, reading it, you have that connection to it immediately. And I'm, you know, just really interested, because again, we would have just defaulted to just contacting people who we already know have got a connection with the club. And I think there's a really much broader market out there that we can connect to. And this is a way of kind of really getting some important data and measurement back on that, and not just relying on maintaining and talking to the people that are already kind of on a club database. This campaign would enable us to go so much broader.
Yeah.
Actually have some real data back to know that it does have a return, then I can go to the board and say it was a really valuable process to execute because this is the return that we've got for it. There's some real kind of evidence behind it.
Are currently your donations seasonal? Are you in the front of people's mind when the season's playing because everyone's thinking about football, and then forget about you off season, or do people think about you because it's winter, or does that affect when you get the donations coming in currently?
I think it'd be really hard for us to kind of put a kind of guess on that, really, because I think generally people think about us when we ask them. I don't think they necessarily come to think about us in that sense. I would say it probably is quite seasonable. So, you know, when football games are on and we've got a foundation takeover game that's happening on a match day, all of a sudden we are visible, but that's one match in, you know, what could be 20, 25 home games a season, and then we'll fall off that radar. You know, we slip off that radar again. It relies on us then kind of coming back with the next initiative. But within everything that we've done today, we've not ever really been able to kind of measure the impact of anything other than we had a foundation takeover game and we raised £6,000. We can't say like what the takeaway from that is, or which type of fan it was that gave us that money, or which part of the ground did raise the most. We don't have any of that kind of intelligence, whereas I feel like a campaign like this would really get us to start to dissect and understand the data and kind of where our success rate could come from.
Just on another note, Siobhan, so you touched on the frequency of campaign and not, you know, wanting people to be bombarded with comms, which is fair enough. But I think that just turning our attention to, we talked about the integrated marketing, but turning our attention to the web to print portal that your comms lady could use, would you consider, or would it be a good idea within that to have, you know, categories within it that support the different initiatives that even the coaches could use? So if you had a category for primary stars, one for kicks, one for breakfast clubs, and then within each segment you've got, you know, they could create their own certificates, they could, and as Kelvin said, you know, it can go direct to press and delivered, you know, more than likely next day these days. And then just have the, you know, the general comms. So when you're doing invitations to balls, you know, charity fundraisers and things like that, you can have, you know, a standard template that will allow your comms lady to, again, just go in, update any imagery, change any text and send it to print, or even do, you know, a data merge and get it posted out.
Yeah, I mean, I think for us, one of the big things that it would give me is that consistency across the organisation.
Exactly. That's the idea.
You've got some diligent staff that are brilliant and won't let anything go out that they know I wouldn't like, and then I've got other staff who'll sort of go, she won't see me doing that, and then I see little things on the photocopier and I'm like, what is that certificate, and who said that you could do it in that design? And you know, we've got some staff who don't have that design expertise, so we'll just stick to the proper process. And then you kind of have other staff that go, oh, I'd quite like to have a go at a bit of a design. And then I don't have any brand consistency. I've got no quality control. There's not a kind of natural progression. When we start, you know, I did do a little bit last season. I was like, right, we're having one set of certificates, but it's got 3 kind of looks to it. So there's something for the kids in the primary school. There's something for the kind of more secondary school age pupils. And then there was kind of a third style, which was about kind of reward and recognition. So not about kind of performance in a kind of skills base, but more about they've made a commitment, they've got some resilience, they've improved their esteem. And that was much better, because I was like, if you want a certificate, you've got to choose 1 out of the 3, but there's no option outside of that. So I think exactly having that kind of portal, and it makes it just really simple for the staff there, and they can go in, it's kind of instant, it's a bit more, it's a quicker response rate rather than having to go through a process of writing a brief, putting it into the design team, perhaps having to wait a week for it to come back. Because sometimes the on the ground delivery staff they're juggling a lot of things, and they want something tomorrow because all of a sudden they've got a slot on a school assembly and they want to give those certificates out, and it doesn't work. Then me going, well, you can't have them for 2 weeks because we've lost the moment. So I think having that kind of functionality where they've got a little bit of input, but it kind of keeps very consistent look, I think that would be really useful.
Yeah, good. Okay, I think we're just about done. Any more questions, Siobhan?
No, I think what you presented back is really useful, really insightful, lots for us to think about, loads of things that I've learned today that I had no knowledge of before, and really exciting to see how we can actually bring all of this to life now, and excited to see what happens when we push the button and launch the campaign.
Oh, good. So you want to go ahead then?
Definitely. I think we've got to try this and see what the results are.
Awesome. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Siobhan. Thank you.
Thank you.
Body wave.
Zoom wave.